What up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the NGR Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. Brian, you called it without me knowing anything. I wasn't reading anything into Andor and what the show was going to be. I don't know. The excitement and exuberance you displayed before the show is being shown now by many people, praising Andor for what, Brian? Not being goofy. This show is amazing. This is what Star Wars should have been. Brian, tell us, the fans of the genre, the fans of Star Wars, why people are saying the things that they are saying about Andor, and why this is the Star Wars we needed, and what hope does it give you for the future of the Star Wars franchise?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you go back to our top 10 TV shows of the year, I had this 4. And I remember saying, I said, from an anticipation standpoint, I'm going to put Obi-Wan ahead of this. But I think this is going to be the better show. And I can safely say 4 episodes in, it is the better show. I don't even need to see the next 8 episodes. It is a better show. So why was I excited? Number one, Tony Gilroy. I mean, I think this is literally one of the 5 best screenwriters of the last 50 years. He saved Rogue One, which is an awesome movie, by the way. It was on TV the other day. I went and rewatched it, and I was like, I think that movie's aging really well.
Well, yeah.
I think if you watch it now, you might actually like it more than in 2016. I just was watching the scene of them on the suicide mission and like watching the good guys checking out, and you're like, there's real emotion and gravity. And these guys know they're going to die. And they're doing it for each other, and it means something. And like, even right down to, spoiler alert, Cassian Andor on the beach, and we know that's how he meets his end. But it's just and then of course you can toss in, Vader's sort of career peak in that final sequence, and you're like, this is underrated still. I know it made a ton of money, but this is still underrated in the grand scheme of Star Wars rankings. So, and this is the guy who wrote all the Matt Damon's Bourne movies back in the day. Just as a very high profile example of like, the guy gets it. Like, he gets action, he gets feel. And so I felt like you were going to get a very advanced show. And that's really what this is. This is, to me, Star Wars for grownups. This ain't for kids. Now, there's an age at which you might enjoy this show, but this is not
for kids,
for your son and daughter. This is for the people who have lived and breathed this universe. And Gilroy's saying, I have big, basic questions that I want to ask and answer. And I love that. I think it's my favorite thing about this show so far is he's asking the question in a intergalactic conflict that Star Wars became. How does a rebellion like that start? It's a one-line tagline. And then he's using Cassian Andor, and he's using these supporting characters, which we'll get to start to explore that question. It's a great premise. It's a great hook.
Yeah.
And we're just seeing the seeds of it. So that's my number one thing. It's just, and I think you hear it. The writing asks a lot of you. This is not dumbed down. Like, these guys are, it's snappy. They are using real syntax, and there's a rhythm to it. It's just different than what you're used to in Star Wars. And I love it. It works perfectly in the show. So that's my number one. What's the biggest thing that's standing out to you so far when what would hook you from episode 1 onward?
I like the different factions of the Empire, and learning about how they operate and their missions, and the people that are sent out to sort of get rid of any opposition and their emotions and feelings, because they have lives too, right? And so I like that interest. I'm interested in that, and I'm also interested in the characters, man. It looks just so real to in terms of their performance. Looks like I'm immersing myself into that world and how the way they shot it on location. And this guy, Diego Luna, man, if he is not the return of, shall I say, Antonio Banderas in his voice, I mean, Latinos, man, look at Adriana Arjona, So, side note, Warner Brothers would be crazy to get rid of Blue Beetle based on the success of some of these characters.
You hit on number two, which is this. Not only is the writing good in terms of broader story, the writing is very good at a micro level. Like, you get invested in the bad guys as well as the good guy. Like, I'm already that deputy inspector. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like him, but I'm not totally rooting against him either. That he plays that part of like that ambitious, like wants to be a good sympathizer and enforcer for the Empire, and obviously it blows up in his face spectacularly. But like, that character is compelling. Like, I'm interested to see, where does he go from that setback? He obviously feels a certain way about how that played out. I love the intelligence operation in episode 4. I thought was awesome. Like, to see like basically the Empire's version of the CIA. And you got like the old, and it's filled with like people that
guy is dope.
See. Anton Lesser, who's been in a ton of shows, great in charge, like perfect blend of arrogant but like fatherly. And then you've got like the hungry female officer who clearly is right. Like, you can tell she's got an instinct that like something bad's going down and they need to snuff it out. And they're like, we don't need to work. It's perfect. The politics are perfect, And I just, we care about those scenes as much as we care about something that always works, which is we're getting the gang together for a heist. Right. So Andor's off meeting his crew and and I'm like, all right, we're already going on this first desperation mission. I'm like, I'm in both sides.
Ryan, and like, in terms of how the rebellion work amongst each other, there's just so much secretive dialogue when it's one-on-one. That one-on-one conversation doesn't usually translate into another party knowing full on what's happening, right? They only serve a small purpose. And so the I guess the recruitment of Andor was certainly interesting in that this is the guy that we need to do the things that we need him to do, because he does it so effortlessly, right? He doesn't think twice. And these are the things that I think make him, Andor, so interesting. And his scowl, man, he has it on for the entire show pretty much. So I just love all the characters so far.
Yeah, and I think so far, this, in my opinion, this series is not putting a foot wrong. Like, I even think about the first scene where he's mugged basically by the two Imperial low-level officers. Yeah, but he pulls the trigger. And I think that's really important. Like, he kills the first guy by accident. Clearly, he doesn't mean to kill. But the second guy, he weighs his options. And like most heroes, if you're going to cast him as a hero, would figure out a way to tie the guy up, would figure out a way. And he pulls a trigger, which, by the way, when we're introduced to him in Rogue One, he pulls the trigger on that guy in the first scene.
We were like, well, I was like, oh.
He will go there.
Yeah.
In Rogue One. Yeah. So you're like, he will go there, and it gives you the DNA of like, this guy straddles the line. Like, he's not always, this ain't Luke Skywalker, and like, that's part of the point. But I think this show really benefits from that, because when you're going through these scenes and meeting these characters, you're not constrained by Star Wars mythology. Like, we know he ends up on the beach in the Rogue One mission, and that's his last deal. But it's one of the things I thought this show would excel at, which is they can go anywhere. The question Gilroy is asking has never been explored in Star Wars. So he can take all these characters. The stakes are so high. If they die in any given episode, like, they can do that, other than Mon Mothma, right? Other than Andor, like, any one of these guys can come and go, and it works. Like, you're really hanging on each exchange. And I can't wait to see this mission because I'm already predicting that not everyone's getting out, right? If he's backup, we know he ain't going to be backup for long. So somebody's not making it. So I love that. I love that about this show. So, and then you hit on the other thing, which is the one-on-one buildup, like the Mon Mothma exchange. We'll talk about Stellan Skarsgård. He gets his own section, but like Mon Mothma is going to lead the alliance. Like if any character has like actual weight to carry in the show, it's actually her. It's actually Genevieve O'Reilly, because you have to credibly believe that someday she's going to be their version of a president.
Yeah.
Right. And like, yeah. And so right now she's basically like a money launderer for this nascent rebellion, but you're starting to get introduced to who she is as a character for the very first time. So that exchange in the shop is actually really interesting to kind of, and I can't wait I hope they show this dinner, because I actually feel like that's going to be a pretty like compelling theater.
Brian, what do you think about the set designs? Beautiful, aren't they?
Oh my God. So Coruscant, huge upgrade. Like Coruscant has always looked kind of fake, I felt like, even dating back to Phantom Menace. It looks like a real city. And like, the columns, the traffic. I loved her car, by the way. That's the first like Star Wars legit car that I've seen. I was like, where do I get one of those? But I love it. There's just, I think this show, if it has a lasting impact, is going to revert. I think between this, honestly, and Rings of Power, it's going to revert some bigger budget shows to doing more on location and less in the volume. Because you do see, feel, and enjoy the difference when you know that those characters are in fields, in buildings.
Brian, and it's those little things like wind blowing in your hair and stuff like that. I'm sorry. If you in the desert and that wind ain't moving around and you in the volume and it's like I notice those things. Yeah, and it's like takes me out of it a little bit. It looks obviously as a performance, but it just, I look at it as a performance rather than it being in that story what they're telling. Brian, we've often talked about the future of Star Wars. So far, we still go back to previous times in the Star Wars history, but we've had the conversation of a lot of these shows could be possibly placing situations or characters for future endeavors in the future of Star Wars. Mm-hmm. Do you think, based off the success of this show, they are going to take this and move forward in this direction rather than, I mean, Brian, this show is more compelling to me than the Mandalorian. Mandalorian is dope. Don't get me wrong. Mandalorian is dope. But this one has me like invested quite a bit. So what do you think about the tone that they're taking now? Will they take that into the future content? As well as, do you think, again, are we getting the foundation of what the future of Star Wars post what was it? The Rise of Skywalker? Yeah.
I hope so. I think there's room for both. I think there's a reason why The Mandalorian works and is complete and feels and looks completely different than this show. I think The Mandalorian has perfect blend of adult content, but that like childhood dreamy aspect of Star Wars manifested through Baby Yoda and some of the places they go. I like that too. Yeah. I would not tell Kathleen Kennedy to just abandon that and just do Andor. I think you should pursue both. I think what both shows to me, though, with the exception of the season 2 finale in Mandalorian, what both shows underscore to me is that the future of Star Wars has to lie beyond the Skywalker family. It's not a coincidence that the things we like the most now have nothing to do with them. Like, that story has been told. Yeah. I'm good with it. Like, I can say I don't love how it ended with episode 9. Fine. But you know what? Life goes on. We move on from that.
Of course.
I'd much rather I'd much rather spend more time in worlds like these. It makes me a little bit more interested, honestly, in something like the Acolyte, which I know nothing about, but just because that again has no connection.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like if they pull that off, I'm like, all right, now you've taken me to like Knights of the Old Republic time, and we're starting to, or High Republic time, and we're starting to explore. Great, like I'm interested in seeing that if it's done the way at the level that Mando and Andor have been. But I think with Andor, the other thing that I would say to Star Wars and Kathleen Kennedy is, I think what Andor is really showing me is, and we saw this with Loki too, to a lesser degree, man, it helps to have a plan. Like this show is 24 episodes and done. And Gilroy knew from the second he submitted it, season 1 is in 1 year. Season 2 is 5 years, and I'm going to get you to the start of Rogue One. And this show is moving with confidence because it knows that. That's what I would tell. If they're going to do shows like this, figure out your end point before you start, which is the biggest flaw they had in that last trilogy, and let the showrunners cook from like beginning to end. You can feel it. You feel it because this show's a little bit of a slow burn, right? There's a lot of setup, but like you can get away with that when you know where you're going.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff, man. Star Wars.
We got to talk about Stellan, by the way. We got to talk about Stellan.
That dude is grade A pro, and he is every character he's ever played. He is that good.
Yeah,
he never misses.
No, but it's like it amazes me how he can be in one show he can use that affect to be a villain. In another show he can use that affect to be. In this case, he's a good guy with some dirt on his hands, and he's got this duality. I love that scene where he changes in the ship. Yeah. It's one of my favorite scenes in the whole show where he flips his personality, puts the wig on. You see him making the little gestures, and you're like, oh man, he's just, it's not the kind of role that I think necessarily will win you an Emmy, but it's the kind of role where it's like you can just build a show. This guy is, it's Diego Luna's show, but Stellan Skarsgård is the heart and soul of it so far. He's carrying the early momentum of this. And it's like they picked the perfect guy to do it. Because like when they're having that exchange in the ship, you're like, yeah, like I'm in. I would buy what this guy's selling.
No, when he said, "Don't you want to fight him for real?" Oh man, he said it with like, "Stop all this petty stuff. Don't you want to fight him for real?" Oh man, that guy is amazing, yo. I was thinking about the Mandalorian trailer, and I thought about Carl Weathers and how he's leveled up in that show.
And by the way, that trailer looked great. I think the scale of if that trailer is the tone and the scale and sort of the war for Mandalore, that's going to change how they show season 3. That could be huge too.
Yeah. The future Star Wars right now looks really, really bright, Brian.
On TV.
But I also put in the movies because I think the TV is shaping the movie experience and what they need to put on screen. Certain things can't just, I don't know, Brian. For me, you know me, I don't like goofiness. I'm a grown ass man. But I'm just saying, they are heading towards a direction where I am looking forward to going back to the movies to see a Star Wars film, Brian. I think that I never saw the original trilogy in theaters. The only one I saw in theaters, Brian, I saw the latest trilogy, the Rian Johnson trilogy. I saw those. The one that made a lasting impression on me in theaters was episode 3.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yes. That one captivated me because that was the first time I've been in the theaters to see a Star Wars film. And seeing the classics as a kid growing up, I saw that all as soon as they came on. Anytime they came on, I'm watching Star Wars. I'm getting that feeling back. And I hope to go back to the movie theater to see something like that.
Yeah, you know, I think you obviously couldn't do 24 episodes in a film, but like this would hold up on the big screen. The visuals in this show would
Oh
hold up
yeah,
on the big screen.
absolutely.
Like this looks good enough to be a movie. This is being produced at a level where I'm like, yeah, this feels like I'm just getting a movie for 40 minutes a week.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So I don't know if Gilroy wants to do any more in the Star Wars universe, but I mean, my advice would be if he doesn't, I think they could have him script doctor because man, that guy can write. Like I just love that.
Yeah.
There's all these little lines where it's like Val says he's Clem, he's here. That's all that matters. Like it's just like these little deliveries where you're just like it's perfect. Like it just keeps the scene moving. So I'd love to
Yeah.
see him kind of dabble. Like if they write it, whatever that movie is, because it doesn't look like it's going to be Rogue Squadron. It looks like Patty's not going to be doing no Star Wars film. I'm worried about when we talk about Goofy, I'm worried about that Taika film. Even though it sounds like maybe Christian Bale wants to work with him on it, which is like that could be wild. Christian Bale in Star Wars would be great, by the way, but I don't know what the idea is that Taika has. And then
Brian,
Kevin Feige's one is hanging out there too, which who
yeah.
knows? But
Taika, I think because of Thor Love and Thunder's last it wasn't really well received. It made a lot of money, but it wasn't really well
it was
received.
definitely more polarizing. I think it definitely
Yeah.
he took a small hit on that one.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And he knows it too. And you can tell by the interviews that he did. There won't be a re-release because people, why should there be a re-release for this film, right? I made the movie. This is what it is. So, having said that, I think when he goes to Star Wars, they may not give him as much freedom as he would like. There certainly will be a certain tone that they would like. And I think he's not gonna be let loose to do whatever he wants, especially not in this world. Because if you think people came after you because of what you did with Thor Love and Thunder, imagine the
Oh
Star
yeah.
Wars fans that will come after you for doing something crazy and goofy with Star Wars.
Well, look
It
what
just
happened to
can't
Ryan
be.
Johnson. I mean, that was. I mean, I don't even consider what he did that adventurous or that egregious, and that
Yeah,
became
yeah, exactly.
the lightning rod for that entire fan base. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
but this shows you this show appears to have appeased a lot of the
oh,
diehards. So it does
oh,
show
hell's yeah.
you there's a lane where you can be original and be different. But I also think like similar to Rogue One, I am not missing the Force and lightsabers in this show. And I think that would I don't know if we'll run into that at any point, but like I almost feel like it would take away from what this show is achieving so far.
Do you think, Brian, there will be some force sensitive beings in this that you'd be like, oh snap? Again, setting up the future of Star Wars.
Well, I really hope Vader doesn't show up in this
Oh no, 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 no,
because
no.
I don't think he's well, he exists, right? He does exist at this time, but yeah, I hope they don't do what they did in Rogue One, where he kind of popped up and it worked in Rogue One, but I just don't want to see that again, is what I'm saying. So I'm guessing I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no lightsabers in this show.
No, 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 no. Force sensitive beings, though.
Maybe.
That'll be
Well,
interesting.
I would say season two, maybe because season two is covering 5 years. So in those 5 years, the idea that they would not have a single force sensitive anything actually starts to become a little bit questionable. Whereas like in this season, I think no. I think this season is going to be all like in the streets, on the ground, guerrilla type warfare. Like I think that's going to work against Imperials who are running security in local outposts, as opposed to, well, we know the Death Star hasn't been made yet, but there was a mention of Scarif and all that equipment being sent there, which we know is what that's for. That's the building. So
yeah. Very interesting. Star Wars is back, ladies and gentlemen.
watch this show if you haven't started. Like,
oh yeah, I've been telling people who are Star Wars fans and they didn't like Boba Fett too much, and I get that. They liked Kenobi a little bit, but it still wasn't something that they were looking forward to seeing every week. And I've told, listen, you got to watch Andor. This is it right here. This is it. So hopefully people have been watching, man, because this is definitely a dope show. They're already working on season 2. And like you said, it's a season 2 and that's it. And this is a dope show. So I recommend everybody watch it. Let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of Star Wars so far. And also let us know in the comment section below, do you want the future of Star Wars to sort of be in the tones of Mandalorian, Andor? Do you care for a sitcom? You know what I'm saying? Do you care for any of that stuff, or do you want to continue going down this path of because we don't know what the future Star Wars looks like, Brian, after that's totally new territory. That's totally new territory. I understand the I guess the just the thought of creating this thing from scratch, almost having finished this. Like, how do you get there, and what sort of circumstances do you create? That, look, the Republic was huge. Can you equal or better that sort of opposition? That'll be difficult. That'll be difficult. But certainly interesting to know whether or not they'll go in the future of Star Wars to see where they go. But yeah, let us know in the comment section below. We'll see you next time on the NGR Report.